Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick. In this video we're going to be comparing the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the Hoka Mach X2. The Mach X2 and the Endorphin Speed 4 are both plastic or nylon plated super trainers that came out this year. They're two of the best new shoes of the year in my opinion. I've really enjoyed running in both, and they do a similar job in that they are fast training focused shoes that actually have the versatility to do a little bit of everything. They're both pretty pricey. The Hoka Mach X2 is £170 or $190, whereas the Endorphin Speed 4 is £180 or $170. The Mach X2 weighs in at 255 grams or 9 ounces in a UK 9, which is a US 9.5. Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, I've tested the UK 9 and the UK 0.5. This is the smaller shoe, which weighs in at 244 grams or 8.6 ounces, so it's a little bit lighter in the same US size as the Hoka Mach X2. Mach X2 has a 5mm drop with a stack height of 44mm at the heel, 39 at the forefoot in the men's shoe, 42 at the heel, 37 in the forefoot in the women's, and the Endorphin Speed 4 has a stack height of 36mm at the heel, 28 at the forefoot for an 8mm drop. With the Hoka Mach X2, the star of the design is the midsole, which is a dual density midsole. The top layer is Hoka's Piba foam, the bouncy stuff we've seen on racing shoes like the Rocket X2 that is, and the Cielo X1, as well as the first version of the Mach X, but there's more Piba foam in the second version. And then the bottom layer is a supercritical EVA foam. Running between the two layers of foam, you have a winged P-Bax plate. The wings are in the forefoot there to add some structure and extra stability at that point of the shoe. The shoe has a rocker geometry with cutouts on the bottom to reduce the weight. You've got a very lightweight woven upper with barely any padding at all, especially around the heel, which could be a bit of a problem area for some people. And then you've got a rubber outsole used fairly sparingly, although key impact areas around the heel and forefoot are covered. With the Endorphin Speed 4, you've got a Power Run PB midsole, which is Saucony's Piba-based foam. You've got two layers of that with a nylon plate running through it, again with wings, just like the Hoka, to add some more stability to the shoe. They're positioned more around the midfoot of the Speed 4, though, as opposed to the forefoot wings on the Mach X2. The shoe uses Saucony's Speed Roll rocker, and it has a pretty lightweight engineered mesh upper, more padding around the heel and collar, and more structure around the heel with internal heel counter than you get on the Hoka, which really has no kind of structure at all at the back there. And then you've got a lattice rubber outsole, good forefoot coverage, a little bit of a cutout, but a bit more rubber on the Endorphin Speed 4 than you have on the Hoka, although in practice they deliver similar levels of grip, and I imagine durability will be quite similar on that outsole across the two shoes.
So when it comes to fit, I've run in a UK 8.5 in both of these shoes, which is my regular shoe size in a Saucony and in a Hoka. I think the big difference here on fit is that the Hoka come up really quite narrow and snug. There isn't a huge amount of wiggle room width-wise in the toe box. There's a reasonable amount of length, but coming back here, if you've got particularly kind of wide feet or a high instep like I have, it all starts to get very, very cramped here around the toe knuckles. You can see here, there's not much room. I feel sort of locked in here, which is a good thing sometimes for a race shoe, but it doesn't mean that it's a shoe that you want to spend a lot of time in. You'll get away with doing a half marathon, hour and a half with that kind of tight fit. But if you're thinking about kind of longer, easier training sessions, then maybe you don't want to do that. I'm also, it numbs up my feet a little bit. It's quite snug across the top of the midfoot. Really, really sort of tight lockdown. So there's no slipping across the midfoot. I don't have much room in the toe box. Can numb up my feet. When you come back into the heel collars, I do find there's a bit of movement back here. There's not that much structure to the heel collars, and they don't hold that well. They're also a bit narrow and thin. It does make me worry about them sort of cutting in. I haven't had it yet, but that is a bit loose here and not quite as secure as I would like. When you come over to the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, this is an instantly disappearing feel. It's very natural on the foot. There's a lot of room lengthwise. There's a lot of wiggle room in terms of the flexible uppers, but I get good lockdown and hold across the midfoot without any of that really sort of tight snugness. This is a shoe that I can spend hours and hours and hours in without any discomfort. They just disappear. When you come back into the heel collars, I quite like the fact they've got this kind of more traditional sort of medium padded heel collars that rise up and hold the foot really nicely. I don't get any slipping here. I just get good comfort. There's no danger from cutting in. There's a bit of extra padding and comfort from the tongues. And so when it comes to fit, I think I prefer the fit of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. I think that fit also has a crucial point here, is it makes it a much more versatile, rangy shoe for me than I'll get from the sort of racier Hoka Mach X2. And if anything, I think if you've got a higher instep or wider feet, I think you might benefit from going half a size up in this shoe if you want a bit more room.
So it comes to the fit of the two shoes. I've actually tried two different sizes with the Endorphin Speed 4. So the first was my normal UK 9, which is a US 10. That is the size I generally have with Saucony shoes, and it was completely fine in the Endorphin Speed 4, but I am on the barrier between two sizes generally, so I was interested to try a slightly smaller size in the shoe, and this is a UK 8.5, which is a US 9.5, and it also fits me well. So if you're right on the barrier between two sizes, I think you could go either way. It would kind of depend on your preference. I like a slightly more dialed in fit, so I slightly prefer the smaller size shoe, which is the same US size as the Hoka, which I have in the UK 9, which is a US 9.5. Again, quite a dialed in fit, what I like in a shoe like this. As with pretty much all Hoka shoes, it's got a slightly narrow design. I think there is a wide version of the Hoka Mach X2 available now in one colour, but in the standard shoe you have a more narrow fit in the Hoka than the Saucony, and you've also got a slightly more problematic fit at the heel. Now, I've heel locked the Hoka Mach X2. I have had no problems with this heel actually rubbing or cutting my skin. I like a minimal heel counter because it means the shoe won't irritate my Achilles at all, and I've got on perfectly well with it, but it's something to look out for with the Mach X2. That heel counter might be a little bit choppy. I think the fit on the Saucony is much more straightforward and comfortable. I've had no problems with it at all in either size. So yeah, I would stick to your normal running shoe size in both shoes. I'd be wary of a narrow fit in the Hoka, and if you're on the barrier between two sizes with the Endorphin Speed 4, you could look at going up or down depending on how much room you want in the toe box. On to the run test, and these are two shoes I've done a lot of running in this year, and I have absolutely loved running in this year. I think they are the two standout plated training shoes on the market. They are very versatile, but they also have a lot of top-end speed. That's what I like when I'm looking for a super trainer. If I'm going to spend a lot of money on a plated training shoe, I want it to be able to do my speed sessions well, and these two shoes both do speed sessions really well, but actually they are a lot more than that. I'm very happy using them for easy runs as well. I think they are great do-it-all shoes. And I have done pretty much everything in them. I've thrown a lot of different runs at both of these shoes, done progression runs, track sessions, like tempo sessions on the road, and easy runs as well, recovery runs, that kind of thing, and I've enjoyed them all in both of the shoes. I also think they'll fill in well for carbon plate racing shoes if you want a slightly cheaper option to use for your races and don't want to spend over £200 to get a full-fledged carbon race shoe. So I said recently in the Mach X2 review how much I love the shoe, and I probably had it at number 1 overall in this Super Trainer rankings, but I wanted to get back in the Speed 4 to kind of confirm that, so any excuse to get back out in the Endorphin Speed 4 and do some more runs is always one I welcome, and it has reminded me how great it is. I did a session in the shoe at the weekend where I did, I think, 24 times 60 seconds on, 30 seconds float, so decent 36 minutes of running quite hard, and then straight into 6k at 3:30 per k pace, which is my marathon pace. And yeah, I love the shoe. Like, it felt like an absolute breeze. It really feels like it's giving you that kind of efficiency benefit, that leg saving benefit. It feels really fast in the same way that a carbon plate shoe does, in a more flexible kind of normal design. It does feel quite grounded, the Speed 4. The lower stack height under the forefoot compared to lots of shoes, including the Mach X2, is noticeable, but you get that really smooth rocker, ticks over really well. As a high cadence runner, I always feel like it's doing lows to support me and facilitate my style of running. And then for the warm-up and cool-down on that run, on easy runs in general, I feel like it's got quite a squishy, soft heel for me, and it feels comfortable all round. It's not always the most cushioned shoe under the forefoot, though. I do think it's nice and squishy at the heel, but because it has a relatively low stack under that forefoot compared to lots of shoe these days, as a heel striker, slapping through, sometimes if I'm doing a long, hard run in the Speed 4, I get a little bit of forefoot discomfort. It's not too big a problem, I would say, but it's more noticeable, certainly, than on anything I've had in the Mach X2, which has a much higher stack under the forefoot, a lot of PIBA foam there as well. It's a softer feeling shoe all round, and I don't get any of that kind of discomfort. Mach X is also a bouncier shoe, and because it has a 5mm drop as opposed to that 8mm, it doesn't snap through quite as much as the Speed does for me. You get more of a kind of loping, booming, bouncy ride from the shoe as opposed to the high turnover from the Speed 4. So I said in the Mach X2 review that the second version of the shoe feels a lot faster than the original, and I've gone down and done hard sessions on the track in the shoe. Today I took it out for the second run of a double where I did 5 miles at 5:45 a mile pace, and yeah, it definitely feels like there's a lot more speed in the shoe compared to the original, and it's just easier to run fast in the shoe, and it feels like a faster shoe. The upper feels very racy, and that actually can be a bit of a con to the shoe in some senses, because if you're going out for easy runs, it feels like quite a racy upper. Some people will have problems with the heel design, and that makes it feel a bit more speed orientated, but at the same time I do enjoy easy runs in the shoe. Like when I did my track session, I jogged 5k to and from the track as my warm up and cool down, and it was really comfortable and stable for that as well. Like, it's not necessarily as stable stable as the original Mach X. I think the Endorphin Speed 4 might be a little bit more stable because it is a bit more grounded and firmer underfoot, but I haven't had any significant problems on that front with the Mach X2. So for a bit more of a comparison of the two shoes, I've done a short run wearing both at the same time, and today, as I mentioned, I did a double run. So in the morning I hit the track and did 10 times 1k reps at 3:30 per k pace, and for most of those I used the Endorphin Speed 4. I also used the New Balance Ballast to test out that shoe on the track as well, and I mean, we'll talk more about it in time, but it's softer. The Speed 4 is a bit faster. Ballast is very good though. And then in the afternoon, like I say, I did that kind of threshold run, tempo run in the Hoka Mach X2. And I love them both. Like, it's really hard for me to split between these two shoes. It's definitely a different ride style, and I noticed that when I was running in both at the same time. You've got a firmer feel, more grounded feel in the Speed. It ticks over really well. Yeah, you can really feel there's less foam underfoot, especially on the forefoot. Mach X2 feels bouncier, feels springier, feels a bit softer underfoot as well, but really the result is really good for me in both shoes. I feel fast in both shoes, I feel comfortable in both shoes, and yeah, it's almost a difference in ride feel that some people might prefer different ones. And if I hadn't tested either shoe, I'd probably say maybe I'd slightly prefer the slightly more grounded feel of the Speed 4, but actually sometimes I feel like I prefer the bouncy feel of the Mach X2. So it's actually running in both shoes. I love running in both shoes. So run test, certainly love both of these shoes. I feel they're a cut above most super trainers, especially when it comes to speed work, and yeah, do a better job of filling in for full plated shoes while still having that versatility for those easy runs.
So then if you watch the channel, you'll know that the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 is one of my all-time favourite shoes. I can use this shoe for pretty much anything, any of my runs. I've covered hundreds and hundreds of miles in the Speed 4 in training and in racing. I've covered far fewer miles so far in testing in the Hoka Mach X2, but I have put Hoka's revamped plated Super Trainer through similar efforts to the Speed 4. That's everything from slow and easy to all-out intervals. Now, while I've run marathons and longer in the Speed 4, the longest that I've run in the Mach X2 is around 2 hours. When it comes to the Mach X2, the higher stack and tweak plate, I think, have breathed some fire into the punchy midsole ride, and there's now clear daylight between the energy of this shoe and the Hoka Mach 6. That wasn't necessarily true of the Mach X and the Mach 5. And the Mach X2, there's now much more super in this Super Trainer. I'd happily pick it to attack faster training efforts and even races up to a half marathon. Now the Speed 4, as I said, can handle anything for me. It's a genuine do-it-all all-rounder that I think offers a lively, cushioned ride. It's light, full of energy, without any harshness or fussy business around the way it feels on the foot. It's a shoe that feels immediately natural when you put it on, and it responds when you need it to with speed, but it also cushions when you kind of want to rock back or go easier or you're struggling a bit. Now it's fair to say that both of these are cracking shoes, but to really tease out the differences between them, I've also done a side-by-side mile, and here's what I found. So I've just done a side-by-side mile. I've got the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, one of my favourite shoes, on the left foot. I've got the Hoka Mach X2 on the right foot. I wanted to get a direct comparison of how these two shoes feel. The first thing you notice when you lace them up is that the Saucony Endorphin Speed is a much more natural, accommodating, easy disappearing fit, particularly for my feet, which are quite high on the insteps. They're quite wide, quite short, stubby and fat. And yeah, I don't quite get that kind of disappearing, natural, easy fit in the Hoka Mach X2. Everything feels a bit cramped, particularly across the top of the foot, around the toe knuckles. And it just doesn't feel quite as much like a shoe that I can run easy in, just put on and be happy and run free without thinking about it. It feels much more like a race fit, a shoe that you want to be in for a short period of time rather than a long period of time. But that is just me, and that is the fit. But if you've got that kind of foot volume, I think that might be something to bear in mind, or go half a size up. Now, apart from that kind of a more snug ride, sort of tighter toe box, the ride underfoot here, there is a huge amount of difference between these two shoes. And, the Saucony Endorphin Speed maybe lost a bit of energy between that and the 3 and even the 2. The 2 was quite an aggressive shoe. The 3 and the 4 probably tuned a little bit softer, probably eased off, becoming a little bit more accommodating. The Hoka Mach X originally may have been criticised for not being punchy enough. Now what you've got here is the Mach X2 has leaped ahead, I think, of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 when it comes to that overall energy that's coming back from the midsole plate combo. And the rocker is a crucial element here with the Hoka Mach X2. This is a really, really kind of steep rocker ride that you're getting. The roll through and the smoothness in the kind of touchdown to toe off comes from that rockering. It's really rolling you through in quite an aggressive fashion, but also the midsole foam, it just compresses slightly and kicks back really quickly. Doesn't sink much underfoot from the forefoot right back to the heel, actually, depending on where you land. And it's kind of kicking you into that kind of toe off and that roll through. And it's a much more rolling rockered ride, whereas the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 now feels like there's a little bit more compression from the midsole foam. It's a bit flatter. The rockering's not quite as pronounced. I think the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 is still a very smooth shoe, but it's a shoe I feel like I have to punch a little bit harder into the ground to get the energy coming back out of it than I do now with the Hoka Mach X2, which is almost sort of rolling me and pinging me forward. It's really quite lively, energetic, fun. I think it's a faster shoe. I think if I'm going to go and do all-out kind of speed sessions and interval sessions, the Hoka Mach X2 is the shoe that's going to give me more energy from that. I think there's more control in the Speed 4. It's a more subtle ride now, and it's a more comfortable ride overall. I think there's probably more versatility in the Speed 4. If you're looking for a shoe that has a range that can take you from easy miles right through up to your fast miles, I think the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 is going to give you more of that. It's more comfortable for that. That's not to say the Mach X2 can't do the slower stuff, but it's definitely better. It's a shoe that really wants you to go fast. It wants you to work, at your top paces in your finest form, and it's encouraging that. Can handle a bit slower, but it's probably not as good at it as the Speed 4. So that's going to be a big decision here, but I will do more on that in the verdict back in the office. Verdict then, and in this bit we're supposed to tell you which shoe of these two we think is better, or at least which shoe that we choose first. But before I do that, I wanted to be clear, these are both excellent shoes, right up there at the top of the pile when it comes to faster and more capable daily trainers. I think you'll like both of these. They're both probably worth the price tag as well. But I'm going to try to explain how I differentiate them. If you like a locked-in race fit that's bordering on too tight, with a really punchy, immediate, springy, heavily rockered ride, then the Hoka Mach X2 is the shoe for you. And I'd argue it's actually the punchier, more aggressive, faster shoe overall over the Speed 4. It kind of makes the Speed 4 now feel a little bit tame at times, which of course it really isn't. If I had to race a half marathon, a 10k or a 5k in one of these shoes, I'd choose the Hoka Mach X2. For me, it's much closer to the feel of a carbon racer than you get from the Endorphin Speed 4. However, if you like speed and energy with a little more subtle, more stable, less aggressive ride, plus a more natural, easy, roomy, comfortable, disappearing fit, then I think the Speed 4 is the better shoe. I personally think the Speed 4 has more versatility overall, partly because of that comfort, partly because of the stability and the cushioning. If I had to run for 2 hours with some marathon pace intervals or faster thrown in, I'd probably choose the Speed 4 for that session. It's more accommodating at the slower paces and still capable at the faster paces. Now the Hoka Mach X2 I think is the opposite. It's a much snappier, livelier ride that's considerably happier when you're moving fast in your best form and in attack mode. It's not unpleasant to run slow in this shoe in the Hoka Mach X2, but it's nowhere near as easy as the Speed 4 for that kind of mileage. The Hoka Mach X2 almost kind of begs you to go faster. Now in terms of general disappearing comfort and protection, that reliable kind of landing, the Speed 4 has more of that. So I actually think these two shoes could arguably take up two different roles in a rotation, but I now think the Mach X2 is the more exciting shoe. However, for value and versatility, I still personally pick the Speed 4, but it's a very close call because I think Hoka has made a cracking update to the X2.
Verdict, really hard one for me this might be one of the rare occasions where I really just can't give a verdict and pick between the two shoes, but I can give some advice to people who are picking between these two shoes. I think they're both great do-it-all shoes. I think they're both great fast trainers to add to a rotation. I think if you are looking for one shoe to do it all, maybe the Speed 4 has a slight edge for easy runs because it is a bit more grounded and natural and has a slightly more accommodating upper, but at the same time I really love the Mach X2 for doing everything in as well, and probably the bigger difference will be coming down to the ride feel you prefer. Speed 4 has that really noticeable rocker, really effective rocker, rolls you through your foot strike really well, but is less cushioned under the forefoot, less bouncy. You've got a springier ride with the Mach X2. It might be something that feels a bit more fun to more people as a result. Price difference is a tricky one as well, because in the UK I think the Hoka's cheaper, and then in the US the Speed 4 is cheaper, so maybe if you can find one on a discount, that'd be a way to separate them. But yeah, I'm not going to call it this time. I love both of these shoes a lot. It was a real joy getting to use both of these shoes today, and I find them very hard to separate, so maybe just go on the difference in ride feel or a difference in price at the time. Yeah, like I say, a bit more bounce to the Hoka, slightly nimbler, faster turnover maybe in the Speed, but yeah, both of these shoes do everything well. That's a comparison of the Hoka Mach X2 and Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. Two great shoes. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.